right, so welcome to the Built for the Trades podcast. This is your host, Dan Dowdy, and today I have a fellow coach and facilitator here at Built for the Trades. I have Nathan Glass in the house. Welcome, Nathan.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So this episode is going to be all about recapping a leadership topic or phrase that we pulled out of the interview that I had done with Zach Garside, the CEO of Power Selling Pros. If you have not heard that episode, I encourage you to pause it right here and go to your previous episode and listen to that. Zach is a young powerhouse in leadership. He's worked his way up all the way to CEO in a great organization, Power Selling Pros. And so when I was listening to it, I pulled out one phrase that he talked about, which is doing what is right over what is easy. So in this episode, we're not only going to share elaborate more on what that means and share some awesome quotes from some great people, but I also went around and polled at least 10 people on that. And I asked, doing what is right over what is easy, what does that mean to you? And so I'm excited to share the diversity of information that I received from those people. So, but yeah, Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Anything you want to share with the audience?
No, it's a good topic. Yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
All right. Well, before we get started, if you like what you hear, I just want to remind everybody out there that this show is all about developing leaders. We want to bring content to you that helps you grow in your leadership, because leadership is a lifetime journey, and waking up every day to get better is really the focus. And so if you like this, definitely subscribe and share it with a friend. And let's dive in. So when I was going back listening to the episode, Nathan, Zach was talking about his dad, and he was talking about his journey moving from California to Utah. And he specifically said, my dad, we moved to Utah for better schools and better opportunities, but my dad flew back and forth to California running his business in California. And I had to stop Zach for a minute and say, like, because he was doing locksmith services. And I'm like, of course, there's got to be locksmith services in Utah. And he said, well, my dad had built an established business, and that's where his business was. So he made the right decision for the family to move us, but he did need to go back and work in his business back in California. And he just talked about how that led to his dad doing what was right over what was easy. Because if he'd have done what was easy, he would have kept his family in California and the place they lived, and potentially put the family at risk and stuff like that. So that's what led into that. And when I listened back to the interview, I couldn't help but to talk about this content. So Nathan, anything you want to drop in here of doing what is right over what's easy?
Yeah. So one of the first things that made me think of was back in high school, I played basketball. And so for practice, we would have to do what we called suicides, right? So we would start on one end of the court, run to the first line, run back, run to the middle line, run back, run the next line, run back, run all the way across, and run back. And so what we were supposed to do, the right thing, was to run and touch the line and then run back, run to the next line. But you get tired, right? It's the end of practice. That's usually how we would end practice. And so we would be tired, and, the coach would be on one end of the court. You would be touching the line on the other end of the court. And so, a lot of guys would fudge it, right? You'd shave off a foot or two, and not go all the way to the line. And so I did that the first few times. And I found that, did it really make a big difference? Probably not. But the way that it made me feel, just my soul, right? It didn't feel right from not doing the right thing, right? I didn't feel good. And, it's sort of my soul basically saying, like, you were lacking integrity in that moment. Your coach said, touch the line, and you didn't do it. And that's a small thing. But the next practice, I started doing that. And I just made my mind up that, I'm going to touch the line. That's what I was asked to do. That's what the right thing is to do. And no matter what, if other guys want to shave corners, that's fine, but I'm going to run all the way to the line, even if that means, I'm slower and I don't finish first, whatever. I'm going to touch the line. I'm going to do what's right. And it was things like that growing up that I feel like helped develop my character and develop the kind of habit of integrity, the character trait of integrity. So that was the first example that came to mind of doing what's right over what's easy, because it's easier to run less, but the right thing is to run and touch that line.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I love the story and the analogy to this because if you follow or listen to any great sports athlete,
Mm-hmm.
it's usually you hear things like practice like you play or do the small things right, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
always be hustling full speed when you're in practice because that's the way you're going to play. And man, we can relate that to business, but let's stick with the sports analogy. Like, yeah, if one person out there gets away with not touching that line and their leader, their coach says nothing of it, what happens, right? That influences other people to stop touching the line because
Mm-hmm.
now Bobby over there, who's not touching the line, has now set the new standard.
Yep.
So if you think about that in business, if you're allowing something to slide, you're saying, yeah, you know what, today we're not going to touch that line.
Mm-hmm.
Or today, you know what, this new guy here, he started off strong, but he's now not touching the line. I'm too afraid to go talk to him and have that conversation. So I'm going to let him not touch the line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens? Now that person sets the standard of the company.
That's right.
So that sports analogy can easily be can be talked about in business as well.
And it's like you say about core values, right? Like really, you can put your core values up on the wall, but your real values, the values that are lived out, is a combination of what those are written out, plus your willingness to enforce them. So it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. So Margaret C.S. here has a quote that says, "The right way is not always the popular way and easy way. Standing for what is right, it is unpopular. It is a true test of moral character." I can think back to a story when I was younger, early in my marriage. I had one kid, and I remember specifically, I wasn't going to church. I kind of fell away from that. And at one point, my dad said to me, son, if you don't teach your kids what to believe in, somebody else will.
Mm.
And that always resonated with me. And that got me back focused on what's important in life. And I also think of other people say, like, if you don't stand up for like life, I forget how it goes. Maybe but it's something like, you gotta stand up for something in your life. If you don't, people will walk all over you, and obviously it's going to keep you from getting to where you want to go.
Like if you don't stand for something, you'll stand for nothing.
There you go.
Or you'll be persuaded to stand up for whatever the culture says to stand up for, basically. But yeah, that's right.
That's it. So I did a little research on this, and I pulled a blog from BlissSpot. I wanted to make sure I give them a little credit there, doing what's right over what's easy, right? And I just pulled a little snippet out of here, but they talk about rise above what is easy. It says, do not be afraid to stand alone and rise above mediocrity and what others think. Listen to your intuition and choose to do what is right. You should never take the easy road, but rather the correct path, no matter how long you have to travel. When I was reading that, I thought right away, going back to core values, when people call me and say, "Hey, Dan, I'm thinking about making this decision in business or this job move or whatever decision in life. What do you think I should do?" And instead of giving them my opinion, I usually point back to their core values and say, "Look, what are your core values? You need to go back to those and ask yourself, making the decision I'm going to make, is that going to be aligned with my core values?" Because at the end of the day, if as long as you're doing that, whether you fail or succeed, you made the right choice.
That's good. So instead of letting the difficulty of the situation or the potential pain of making the right decision, instead of letting that influence your decision and what you should do, you test the decision against something deeper, right? Something more foundational, which is your values. That's good.
Yeah, it says right here, when you stand up for what you believe in and uphold the truth, you can walk away without remorse, regardless of the outcome. So exactly what we just talked about there. So let's dive in. I want to share some of the things that people were saying. So Nathan, you shared the story. Did you jot down anything else that came to mind when you hear do what's right, not what's easy?
Yeah, I mean, kind of along the same lines what you're saying. When I think of doing what's right, usually it feels good in the long term, but not in the short term, right? Doing what's right is not always easy in the short term. Sometimes there's short-term pain But having lived a little bit of life, the more I live, the more I see that in the long term, it's going to lead to feeling good about yourself and feeling. Uh, I kind of think of it as like keeping your soul light. I heard that phrase, which is kind of interesting, but a little more spiritual. But basically means when you make the right decisions, your soul, your spirit is not weighed down with the making bad decisions or making wrong decisions or immoral decisions, right? So in other words, your heart is clear, your mind is clear. You're not worried about your decisions when you make the right ones. That's kind of one of the first things that comes to mind. And easy almost always, making the easy decision almost always leads to, in the short term, it usually feels better. It's easier, less burden. You're avoiding a difficult conversation. You're avoiding a difficult decision, maybe. But almost always, right? Like it doesn't take too long before that short-term thinking bites you, and it's going to result in long-term pain.
Short-term thinking.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. There's so much of that as well in leadership and business that I was just on a previous podcast interview and was talking about that. And that person mentioned that, look, it wasn't until I realized in my leadership that I should be helping people, take my job, meaning like equipping them to be able to do my job, that I realized that, like, once I realized that abundance, instead of the opposite, which is not teaching people things because you don't want them to take your job, like that's the short sightedness. The long sightedness is training people up, equipping them to be able to do your job. So that way you can move on to the next, growth pattern in your career, and you can help people around you get better. So, and I also think that, doing what's right over what's easy is, we're sitting here on this podcast talking about this, and I do not want to portray myself as somebody who has this down, because I believe this is a moment in time integrity decision. Yeah. And some are going to be easy to make, right? Especially if it benefits you. And some are going to be really hard to make, especially if it benefits you. It's funny, like, I'll just kind of touch on this before I get to my list here, but when it comes to taxes, right, that's a hot topic, especially with business owners.
Yes.
But it's like, so I have integrity, or I do what's right, not what's easy, until it comes to taxes, because the government, they waste our money, and why do I want to give them more money? They're just going to waste our money. I don't want to get into politics here, but it is funny how we can quickly justify lack of integrity.
Sure.
And that's coming from a place of humbleness. It's not like I've never made that mistake before. I shouldn't say that on air, huh? Scratch that. Cut that second out.
We'll edit that out.
Edit that out. But anyways, so I wanted to go through. I was polling people in preparation for this episode, and for one person just talked about, hey, when I think about having integrity, but the next one is somebody who builds steel buildings. And he says, every day I'm faced with this challenge. He's like, there's so much that I do in welding and building these steel buildings that, like, I could easily cut corners and cover things up, because there's some things that go behind the walls that nobody ever sees.
Yeah.
And so every day this person's faced with things like cutting stuff too short and covering it up, is a great example for tradespeople out there. Like, I remember stories of, in the plumbing trade, crawling under pier and beam houses, plumbing up, you're in water and it's nasty, and you got all these things going on, and you're looking at that last cut and you're like, man, like, I got this piece of pipe and it's like 2 inches too short, but I can just muscle in there and make it work. Like, doing what's right over what's easy, right? The easy thing would be do it because nobody's ever going to see it.
Yep. Even
if it did leak, it's not going to be that big a deal. It's under a pier and beam house. Like, you're justifying all these things in your head. And if you're listening to this and you've never had that situation, you're a liar. I'm just going to go ahead and say that now. But yeah, that's what I mean. It's a moment by moment time, and none of us are perfect. So, I'm going to leave this episode and probably do a moment in time. I may do what's easy over what's right, but it is just like leadership. You want to improve, and just listening to this episode and having this in your conscious mind helps to kind of check yourself.
It reminds me of a story of Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. Apparently, when he was a child, his father told him to go stain the fence. So he stained, the inside of the fence, right? The part of the fence that you could see from the backyard. And his dad said, okay, great. Looks pretty good. Did you stain the back side of the fence? And Steve was like, why would I do that? You can't even see that. And he's like, well, you will know whether it was done right and complete and thorough or not. And so Steve went out and he stained the backside of the fence, and that influenced him throughout Apple. He was known for making sure that the designers of the chips and the circuit boards laid it out in a beautiful, efficient manner and made sure it looked good. Even if no one, whoever owned that computer, was ever going to open it up and look inside, he wanted to make sure that the inside of those computers looked beautiful and worked well.
Wow. Powerful story.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, it both took him learning to do what's right or what's easy. And it also, you think about from the dad's standpoint, like he probably was frustrated, and he probably wanted to get the job done and go about doing it. But he slowed down and said, this is an opportunity to teach my kids something. I'm going to take a little bit, I'm going to have a little bit of patience, and I'm going to go ahead and apply this principle and doing things right the first time. And I mean, there's so many situations out there that cutting corners and doing the easy path over the what's right, it literally injures and kills people.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild to think. So some other things I got from polling people. Another one was time not getting to a builder's job and owning it. So the example is I'm a contractor, right? And I know that I committed to a time to get to a customer's house or get to a job to do that. And what normally happens when that's the case? Normally, you don't hear from that person. Or normally they start ghosting you, right?
Yep.
That's probably the easy way to get out of it, is just the ghost of people. And then when you do finally talk to them, just say, man, I'm really busy and slammed. But every day, like when you're faced with that, you have to think, what's the right thing to do by my customer? And the right thing is he said he finds that they value or they appreciate when he's honest with them. So even if he made a mistake, he at least called and said, I made a mistake, I own it. Here's what I'm going to do to resolve it. And so at the end of the day, they almost can't get mad at you for long, especially because you were honest with them. So that's another example of doing what's right or what's easy. Another one here, this is a good one. This goes back to kids. Somebody else said, when I take my kids to dinner, doing what's right is engaging with my kids. Doing what's easy is shoving a phone in my kid's face and telling them to watch the deal. That one kind of hurt a little bit.
You do that?
I mean, I have 4 kids, and it's funny. Early on, like my oldest is 8 or 9 years older than my next kid, and she was a perfect little angel. And I remember when my wife and I were young, and we just had her, and we'd go to the restaurant, and she'd be such a good kid. And I'd look around at other parents, and I'd be like, God, look at those horrible kids! Like they're running around the restaurant, like so judging them. And then I look around, and next thing you know, some other parents got a tablet in front of the kid, and literally everybody at the table has a phone or a tablet in front of their face.
Yeah.
No conversation. Man, did I judge those people.
Sure.
But now that I have 4 kids, so I have 3 more kids that are all young. And by the way, the other 3 are like complete opposites. So they're all wild. I have a little more empathy for those families.
Sure.
But this does resonate, because I have to be honest, there has been times where I'm like, kid, shut up, take the phone. But you do have to realize that, part of our job as parents and leaders is that we teach kids to communicate, look people in the eyes, and to show respect and things like that. And so doing what's right is saying, you know what, I'm going to forego my convenience in order to engage with my kids and teach them the right way to eat at a restaurant.
No, that's a good one. That can definitely be challenging. I also have 6 children and similar age gaps, and it takes extra energy. It takes extra courage sometimes to want to engage with them, but I look at it like that is an opportunity at a restaurant with kids, and being a little wild. That's an opportunity to help them develop their character, right? Help them to learn that, in this restaurant, in this public space, this is how we behave, right? Like running around and chasing each other is not okay, right? All these little things that, if you just shove a phone in front of them, they're not going to learn. So that's kind of how I look at it is, here's this little opportunity to teach them what, the correct behavior is in this situation. And it's not always easy. But if I don't do that, they won't learn. They won't learn that.
It's true. All right, couple more here. So think about all the people that you've trained over your career, right? It takes time to teach the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
So doing what's right, right? Slowing down, investing in the next generation, even though they may leave your company tomorrow, you're still doing that. Or you can do what's easy and say, get out of the way. You're slowing me down. Let me do this for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's that goes back to that short-sightedness of like, it's quicker if I do it now versus long-sightedness. Hey, let me invest in you so you can grow and learn how to do this. So that way I can move on and do other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good thought there for tradespeople out there and what they're doing. Another great quote somebody said was, give a man a fish, give a man a fish, right, and he'll eat for a day. But teach a man to fish, and he'll eat for a lifetime. So it aligns directly with what I just said there.
Oh, it's good that taking it back to the family analogy reminds me of we're trying to teach our 4-year-old how to do the dishes. So you can imagine it's a little bit painful watching them, clang all the dishes together, and it's obviously much slower to allow them to do it and be slow and teach them how to do it versus getting in there. Okay, get out of the way. I got to get this done. We got a lot of things to do, a lot of dishes. But we try to take that time to do that. And now that they've done it for 6 months to a year, they're actually getting pretty decent at it. And now they've developed that skill. And now it's actually contributing to our family instead of taking away time, right? So being short-sighted, I would say, get out of the way, let me do it. But it's neat to see, a few months down the road now that they've developed that skill. And here's the other great thing. They feel good about themselves, right? They feel empowered. They feel strong because they're capable of helping out. And now our family is actually benefiting from that. So if you kind of see this as a business, right? Like we're gaining time now because they're more independent, more things are getting done. But initially, first few months, it's taking more of our time. But in the long term, it's actually giving us time back because now they're able to contribute to the family. So obviously bringing this into the business, same thing, right? First few months of training someone are going to be difficult, right? When you start answering the phone and you start asking questions back, right? And you're trying to train them to think for themselves and solve those problems themselves. Well, that's going to be painful and slow the first few months, but give that 3 to 6 months and, pretty soon they'll stop calling you because, all you ever give them is questions.
And people just want to feel appreciated. I can see that has that aligned with the great vision of where you're going and people understanding what they're doing, no matter what, whether it's washing the dishes or answering phones or running service calls or whatever it is in your business, making sales, like all that is helping them to feel appreciated because not only are they helping carry the load, but they also have somebody who's continuously giving them encouragement and pushing them along. And if they make a mistake, you pick them back up and help them again. That's a long-term plan to a great organization or a great family. That's very intentional by the people who are leading in that role. Because the other thing is, get out of my way, let me do it for you, right? Or you don't do it as good as me, so I'm going to do it. You're not as fast as me, so I'm going to do it. Which is all. I'm saying that. I know it's got to resonate with people out there because I'm thinking in my head so many different stories and thoughts and stuff. But talking to the trades, business owner, and managers out there, and what we face every day with our customers. Every day we're faced with the decision: are we going to do what's right? Or are we going to do what's easy? It could be as simple as how we're communicating with the customers. What are we telling our customers? It could be as simple as, are we selling things to customers they don't need just because we want to sell it to them or just because we're comfortable with it, right? That's doing what's easy, not doing what's right. And so here at Built for the Trades, we talk about serving over selling, and serving over selling is truly building rapport, connecting, building relationships, truly uncovering what it is the customer, like what it is they want to achieve, what are some goals they want for their situation, for their house, for their repairs, for whatever it is, and then coming up with clear options that meet exactly their needs, wants, and concerns. That's serving a customer. The opposite of that is just doing none of that and coming in and saying, well, yeah, it's broke. Here's an option to fix it, right? That's selling a customer. So that's how I want to wrap up this episode. Nathan, anything else you had that you wanted to share with the audience before we close this episode out?
Yeah, one more kind of actionable takeaway here is, if you're looking to build the habit, is how I like to think of it, of seeking out hard things, so in other words, like instead of doing easy things, seek out hard things, and that will develop your character in this area. So like one of the things I do is, and we've done together, is a Spartan race. I certainly don't have to go out and like run and carry heavy things and climb things. But I seek out hard things like that because I know it will develop my character and my strength. So whatever that looks like for you, if this is an area you want to work on, I think that's a really great way to do it, is basically seek out hard things intentionally and do it. And that will build your strength to do hard things instead of seeking the easy things or taking the easy path. And I think sometimes it can be helpful to develop that character, that strength in an area outside of your business. And then once you've developed it, kind of bring it into your business. So that's kind of my last little takeaway there.
That's good. And it's getting out of your comfort zone and stretching.
Yeah.
That's totally uncomfortable. So if that's you and you're pushing, you're doing harder things, you're challenging yourself, realize that the uncomfortable feeling that you're feeling is totally normal.
That's right.
And going back to the very foundational is like, make the decisions by your core values, realize that what you're doing today is going to equal what you become in the future. And so doing that consistently and doing the small things right. And just like you said when we started, touch that line, even if somebody else is not touching that line, because how you do anything is how you do everything. And so anyways, hope you all enjoyed this episode. We would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you on what comes to mind when you think doing what's right over what is easy. But we'd also love to hear from you. If you like our podcast, leave us a review. All the reviews help guide our future conversations. We're here to help you grow your business, help you grow your family, help you grow all your relationships through leadership development, which is done not in one time. It's done not with the destination, but it's done in a lifetime journey. So Nathan, thanks again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.